I've got a wild story about how the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card became one of the most valuable cards in the hobby. This story involves an entire barge of cards getting dumped in the Atlantic Ocean, and towards the end, I'm going to give you my reasoning on why I think some of these packs on that barge may have actually survived. So obviously, Mickey Mantle hasn't played a game in a long time, and most of us have never seen him play baseball. But to this day, he's still a legend. He's a 7 times World Series champion. At the time, he was a human highlight reel. He could hit for power, hit for average, and he had a reputation for making great plays in the outfield. And he was really the ultimate man's man at the time. So why on earth does this story end with an entire barge of these cards getting dumped in the Atlantic Ocean? I mean, this sounds like a Jimmy Hoffa type conspiracy, right? It can't be true. Well, it is. To figure out how this happened, we got to go back to the beginning. Back to 1952. 28-year-old World War II veteran Cy Berger and his friend Woody Gelman created the first modern baseball card set, 1952 Topps. These cards were released in the spring of 1952. Series 1 sold very well. So well, in fact, their expectations for the release of the second series soared. But Series 2 sales tanked. Berger and Gelman worked like mad to unload their overproduced stock of these 1952 cards by engaging in carnivals, toy companies. They even were at Woolworths offering these packs for a penny, 2 pennies. They couldn't give them away. By 1960, Berger and Gelman gave up. They had their warehouse filled with case after case of these 1952 Topps. They made the decision to take all these cards and put them on a barge. So once the barge arrived, they loaded like 300 to 500 of these cases. Off it went, and they dumped it in the ocean. Check out the plastic seal on this. I've done a bit of research. This plastic, to me, feels like it's packed tight enough and sealed tight enough so that if you had 500 cases of this, also sealed in plastic. So you're talking 4 to 8 layers of plastic, perfectly sealed. Plastic can last 50 to 100 years, even in salt water. It's making me think, if these were packed tight enough, do we think that some of these could have survived and actually be sitting at the bottom of the ocean right now? I mean, if that's the case, they're worth more than their weight in gold. I actually don't know the answer to this. My brain is saying there's no way, but my heart is saying there's got to be a chance. And what is more interesting is I am a certified advanced scuba diver, and I am tempted to research the location of where this barge dumped them to, at the very least, confirm where it happened, and depending on the depth, just check out that location in a boat to see if there's any sort of sign of any kind of these cards. This would be wild. And even if I don't find them, I think researching the actual spot where it happened would be pretty cool. All right, I've got a map of the Atlantic Ocean and how the Hudson River flows out into it right here. So if they took the barge out on this route, which they very likely did, the lower bay depth where this arrow's pointing is not crazy. Looks like it's like 20 to 40 feet. And I'm going to tell you, this is nothing. This is like basic scuba diving. You could be at 30 feet for almost 2 hours and not get the bends. You don't even have to bring a dive calculator. So that's easy diving. I've personally been as deep as 80 feet and some 200-year-old sunken ships in Bermuda, like literally swimming in their kitchens. And, that's a little trickier. You get a little bit loopy. But this would be nothing in terms of a dive. Very casual, very easy. The current might be a little nuts, but if it's truly the Atlantic Ocean, then all bets are off. Forget it. That's a totally different story. That thing's so deep that you're going to need advanced submarine equipment, like the kind that they took to the Titanic to get, forks and knives and other artifacts. So that's not going to happen. So the key is determining the location. And the only way to do that is to hope that the shipping company still exists. All maritime logs are public information. That's a fact. You can pull up, there's actually a really cool app I'll flash on the screen that you can get right now. It shows all the shipping channels, shipping logs, where the ship's coming from, where it's going, sometimes even what it's carrying. It'll have pictures of the ship. Maritime logs are public information, so the route that this ship took It's probably handwritten. It's probably at the back of some library or some warehouse or something, but it's there. So it's findable in terms of the shipping lane. So if the log exists somewhere, then technically I could find it. And if I did find it, we could at least figure out the final destination of these cards. So here's something else to think about. PSA ones go for like 50 grand, right? Like even if it's soaked in water and dried and bent in half and you wipe your, your sweat with it, it's worth 50 grand. So if there's 500 cases, assume, I don't know, one mantle per case, that's 25 million, two mantles per case, that's 50 million. All right, let's take this in a different direction to find out exactly, in a perfect world with a magic wand, what this treasure could be worth. I mean, look at this brick right here. This brick sold in 2023 for $873,000. I imagine the price is pretty stable on this. It might even go for $1 million now. How many of these little bricks do you think are in one sealed case of 1952 tops? I actually don't have any idea. I'd say minimum 10, possibly 20, right? And we know that there's 300 to 500 of these cases on that barge. So in a perfect scenario, you're looking at 15 million per case. I wonder what a case is actually worth. I'd have to look up what one sold for. Let me know in the comments if you know what a sealed 1952 tops case has gone for recently. Can't imagine there are many, but I feel like one sold recently. Regardless, if you add this all up, this find, just again, pretending that it's like perfectly preserved in the ocean under the sand in 8 layers of plastic, could be worth $500 million in a perfect world, perfect scenario. Obviously, the supply would hit the market, and that might change the price. Obviously, it's economics 101 here, but we're just pretending anyway. It's a pretty crazy dream. I mean, like the odds that are that they haven't survived, but even if you get a few that are somewhat salvageable through 8 layers of plastic, it could be an interesting value equation. I know I'm gonna get a lot of crap for this video. You're crazy, this is stupid, there's no way, it's fish food by now. But man, I think it's an interesting enough path for me to explore. And at the very least, I am going to explore some of the family members of Cy Berger because he's no longer with us and just talk to them. Find out what happened with the shipping, when it happened, start to dig up the companies, and who knows, maybe some distant family member will actually have a pack of 1952 tops in their attic that they forgot about for 50 years. So that could be the conclusion to the treasure hunt. But either way, I think this is worth following. So if you want to tag along, hit that subscribe button. This is not the end of this story.